Hi, my name is Ben. You are watching wowacoolusername, and the lighting's a little off because I don't have my light. Anyway, I think I'm trying to get back into it now, as I am right now. Starting with today's video, we'll start with a little bit of context for what I'm going to talk about. Mouthwashing, which has an interesting fandom, to say at least. As someone who has been a part of this fandom, I watched Jack Manifold play it in October when it was released, and I enjoyed it so much. I made an OC for it and everything. And while I haven't played it myself, it's because I don't have any money, and I would really love to, but I've seen multiple playthroughs, so hopefully. The game has a beautiful story, obviously, that I fear went over everyone's head, despite it being, painfully obvious. That's right, media literacy. That's the subject of today's video. Something that a lot of fandoms lack as of late. Obviously, we're going to have a trigger warning for rape, sexual assault, pregnancy, suicide, body mutilation, and body horror. If that's going to be an issue for you, you don't have to watch this video. Please, 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 please take care of yourself first. This video is going to be a discussion on things I've observed in the mouthwashing fandom, and the comments are going to be a discussion as well. I'm not trying to attack you for anything I will mention in this video, and also if I get something wrong, as I probably might, feel free to correct me in the comments. Media literacy is a community discussion where we're all trying to help each other get to the same point, please. According to Wikipedia, Mouthwashing is a 2024 psychological horror adventure game developed by Ron Organ and published by Critical Reflex, played from the first-person perspective. The game follows the 5 crew members of the freighter spaceship Tulpar after a mysterious crash leaves them stranded in space. Captain Curly, alive but severely maimed and unable to speak or move, is blamed by the remaining crew for deliberately crashing the ship for reasons unknown. The game uses a split, non-linear narrative to tell the story, using both Captain and Curly and co-Captain Jimmy to show the events of before and after the crash. For this media literacy problem, I took to Twitter, TikTok, and Tumblr to try and find what the fandom itself feels is the worst of this poor media literacy, which sounded like a bad idea at first, but I was very surprised by the amount of good responses I got, especially on TikTok, where the fandom seems to be at its worst. One point someone made that I really liked was the fact that the Anya should have told Swansea or Dysky people are not understanding the point of the game. It hinges on the idea that Anya told the wrong man, which is not the moral of the story. Curly reacted to this information the exact way his character was designed to react. He tried to talk to Jimmy because that was his friend he had known for years. Jimmy hadn't really shown outwardly, at least to Curly, that he'd be the type of person to rape anyone. So of course, there would be an element of surprise to this information. Of course, the way he handled it was not the best, obviously. But you also need to understand that Curly is neither good nor bad. He was trying to handle the situation the only way he knew how, and it's much harder to deal with that in space when no one else is around. It also does show how rape culture works in society. Each character is an important part of showcasing the patriarchy in action. Anya being the woman victimized by this, Jimmy the rapist who can't take responsibility for his actions, Curly being the enabler and trying to see both sides kind of person, Swansea who doesn't care and did not do anything until he had to, and Dysky being the unaware one who enforces the boy club that excludes Anya. It didn't matter who Jimmy told because they would all be stuck in the same situation anyway. If Jimmy didn't crash the ship, Anya would most likely have been forced to give birth to a baby she didn't want in an unsafe and non-sterile environment where it would have been a detriment to her health. Also, the Anya keeps the baby AUs are never done right. Realistically, it can be really difficult to get an abortion as well as any sort of support for it, especially in America, assuming that Anya is American. But also, if she did keep the baby, there would be that constant reminder of her trauma right in front of her. There would also be a sense of resentment for her rape baby. She would also most likely not have support if she kept that baby. Women can't win, unfortunately, and a lot of people don't see that. And while this AU could be interesting to explore, I have yet to see anyone do it right and in a respectful way that doesn't seem like low-key pro-life. There's very little they could actually do about Jimmy anyway because he was necessary to the ship's operations, believe it or not. He was the co-captain. He had important things to do. He had very important duties. Obviously, he knew what he was doing when he crashed the ship, so of course he knew how to fly it. He had an important job on the tulpar, and I understand he committed a crime, but they were in space. That had to be something they dealt with when they were back on Earth. It couldn't be something they dealt with on the tulpar, because their company seemed to dock their pay over the stupidest shit. Post-crash Curly is also not dealt with properly. It wasn't a punishment for Curly's actions. It was just something unfortunate that happened to him because he couldn't stop Jimmy in time. It also doesn't make Curly useless. Obviously, he's in a lot of pain and can't heal properly while on the tulpar due to the lack of supplies and medical staff. Anya is doing her best, but she's only one woman. If Curly was in a hospital, he would have been able to probably get his skin back, prosthetic limbs and or a wheelchair, and more accommodations to make his life easier. He is disabled. That's not that hard to figure out. And disability is not a punishment. As I mentioned before, he was a morally gray character who saw the best in everyone. He tried his best, and he really couldn't do anything about it. If anything, Curly is a metaphor for Anya's baby. She is forced to care for someone who had been thrusted upon her unwillingly. And she does care for Curly, otherwise she wouldn't do all of this. It's just stressful and causes her to be pushed over the edge. Curly being a metaphor for Anya's baby also shows how Jimmy doesn't want to take responsibility for said baby, feeling forced to care for something even if it was his fault. And it is his fault. Speaking of Curly, oh brother, there's this Jimmy cosplayer named Jax who made a video with his little brother dressed up as Curly behind him saying, "If Curly was a girl, I'd rape him too." But sure, he may have been trying to say that as the character Jimmy, which he was cosplaying as. Still, what? Curly doesn't have autonomy to say no because he can't speak. He doesn't have vocal cords. He can't speak. Sure, he can scream, but he can't say no. He can't really give consent. So anything you do to him will be rape because he's, incapacitated right now. And it misses the point of the game. You used your own brother to play Curly for this, where you said you would rape Curly. And I fear I don't have to explain why this one is bad. It should be obvious. I just wanted to mention that because I feel like it is also very important to showcase that it's very similar to how people who have a crush on post-crash Curly, it is the extreme, but it is very similar to how they are. There are also people who still deny or ask if Anya got sexually assaulted. It was the point of the story, basically. It was heavily implied, even if it wasn't explicitly stated. In the back of my mind, it's still there. Her asking why there aren't locks on the bedrooms, the fact that she's always nervous around Jimmy and constantly has a sort of fawn trauma response where she tries to keep him from getting angry. Jimmy sexually assaulted Anya. That is a fact. That's one of the reasons Anya got pushed over the edge and killed herself near the end. It was also the stress of being pregnant and not being able to do anything about it, trapped on a ship where she'd have to have a painful, dangerous birth. Also, people watered down all the characters, just one or two things, and that's not fair because they're deep characters that have been heavily thought out. There's just a lot to them. They watered down Anya to just being a victim when she's so much more. Anya said, "We aren't defined by our worst moments, so why is Anya watered down to just a victim? Why is she watered down to just her worst moments?" She was a nurse who managed to keep a dying man alive for months with just painkillers, basically. Even if she had failed nursing school, she still retained that knowledge, and I'd love to sit down with her and get to know her further because she is interesting. And she's more than just a 2D victim. Though that is still part of her character, she's more than shy, seen as Curly's POV. She jokes around, and she's a lovely, nice person from what I can see. Curly is way more than someone who just failed Anya. He tried. It isn't black and white. It never is. Every character reacted how they were written and designed to react. I'm also tired of people saying that the other people can't like how Jimmy is written. He is a very well-written character. He's a man who feels inferior to his best friend. He's a jealous man who wants to be the best. This sort of thing has followed him for as long as he and Curly have been friends. And that stress leads him to commit a horrible crime, one that he doesn't feel guilty for. He feels guilty for failing Curly, of course, which is why that man is in his hallucinations the most. And because he does not feel guilt for what he did to Anya, Anya's not in his hallucinations as much. And he also just doesn't want to deal with the situation. In fact, he mostly feels guilty for crashing the ship because it harmed his friend. He hardly cares for what he did to Anya and sees her as lesser than. He thinks Anya can just abort it and deal with herself, not understanding that there is no safe way to abort this baby on the ship by herself with no proper tools, because Anya will die if she tries that. Jimmy's a man. He doesn't care. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know how this works. Jimmy inevitably decides the only way he can preserve his reputation is to blame Curly, his best friend, for crashing the ship. And when his lie starts to fall apart, he covers up his tracks, which ends up in everyone but Curly dying, including Jimmy. He put his own reputation over the captain, his best friend. Dysky is also an interesting character. However, he's highly infantilized by the community, which, by the way, is a harmful Asian stereotype that happens in real life and causes actual violence to Asian people, especially in America. It's heavily racist in America. I'm so sorry. They are often portrayed as subservient and meek, and only there to push along the storyline for the white person in media. LA Times High School Insider says, Asian men have also been commodified into objects of cuteness through K-pop and anime, making their masculinity breed toxicity due to their inability to ever be manly enough in the eyes of the world. Dysky's a grown man. He's at least 20 years old, and while he is youthful and cheerful, he's not a child. He has sexual thoughts, which is revealed by Swansea. Thinking with his downstairs long nose. And he's also very strong due to being, a baseball player. He's grown. He's not a child. I can't believe that I even have to argue that he's not a child that needs to be constantly babied. He shows no evidence that he is incompetent or incapable of doing things. Sure, he doesn't think things through, but he's still in his early 20s, and that sort of thing comes with age. Wisdom. Either way, it's very racist to infantilize Dysky. Please do not do this. He is an adult. He is not a child. He's an adult. Remember this. I also believe Dysky would not have helped Anya in the way people would have wanted him to. Sure, he may have been upset, but like Curly, he has a very positive view of Jimmy, and it would take a lot to change that. Hell, he even helped Jimmy roofie Swansea without much question. He wants to be helpful. It makes him easily manipulated, but complicit in the end. Swansea is also not innocent. When it was implied that Anya told him, he didn't do anything. It wasn't until Jimmy's actions killed Dysky that Swansea actually did anything. Why did it have to take the death of a man for him to do something? He has children at home. He has a wife. Anya was already dead at this point, and yet no one really ever acknowledged her death, and it was something everyone had brushed over. And not only that, but the game is more than just about the sexual assault, and believe it or not. Did we forget the anti-capitalism and anti-corporate undertones? Pony Express did not care about their employees. They only cared about the money. That's why they weren't left with survival supplies in case of emergency. That's why they would get docked pay if they used too many meds or opened the cargo bay too early. That's why they have one birthday party a year for everybody. That's why when they did crash, they didn't even bother to send anyone after them. I know Pony Express has gone out of business, but they could have told authorities about this, and then they could have gone and saved them. When companies care more about money than people, it causes distress to their coworkers. They were not going to be paid much for their final paycheck. And if they all did end up surviving the crash and making it home, the money would not be worth it. Maybe Pony Express would pay them off to be quiet, but it would not fix the trauma that their own problems inevitably caused. Pony Express is the true villain here. Yes, Jimmy committed a crime, and that is unforgivable, but...
Okay, wait. Wait, that sounds wrong.
Sounds wrong. However, Pony Express helped push him there to that point where he would commit a crime. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Another thing that really bothers me is the Jimmy lobotomy AU. Plain and simple, it's fetish content. It puts Jimmy into a victimized light and downplays his previous actions. Oh, he can't remember. He won't do that now. He's much more agreeable now. As if, A, we're forgetting the entire history of lobotomies being done to people for no reason, and the trauma that causes actual lobotomy victims. Jimmy still did the crime. He still raped Anya. A fucking lobotomy wouldn't change that. Unfortunately, it's just another one of the Fandom's ways to excuse Jimmy's actions. Why Why are we excusing a rapist's actions? Also, the fandom tends to dance around Jimmy's name and turn him into a Voldemort-type guy where they make up nicknames for him that honestly are kind of creative, I won't lie, but they still take away from the severity of the crime. Jambalaya, J. Diddy, that one is just insensitive. Jabortion, Jorts, Jail Time, Jerry Springer, and many more infinite combinations that just turn Jimmy's character into a joke, and a if we do not speak it, it never happens sort of situation. It's very similar to when people give different names to body parts because it's very uncomfortable for them to say vagina, boobs, penis, testicles. And they tell little kids to call it these dumb little names, and that just causes them more harm and will actually end up getting them at more high risk to be groomed, believe it or not. Instead of calling it like rape, they call it grape. Or they'll call sexual assault SA. Or they'll call murdering or killing unaliving. It's taking something that's really bad and turning it into something less bad so that people can handle it in media. And I understand, as a person with trauma, that it can be triggering to see, but that's fine. You're allowed to be triggered by something. But you also need to understand how bad something is at the same time. You need to say his name. Say it. Jimmy. Jimmy, 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 Jimmy. Hell, even James or Jim. At least we know who the fuck we're talking about and it doesn't make light of a horrible situation. Jimmy, 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 Jimmy. And the same goes for the sorry you had to draw / cosplay / animate / etc. Jimmy jokes. Why is it only the mouthwashing fandom doing this, by the way? People draw characters such as William Afton, a serial child murderer and a horrible father. Fucking Valentino from Has-Been Hotel, who is also a rapist, as well as many other characters that commit horrible crimes that I can't think of off the top of my head. So why is it any different with Jimmy? People are going to create art pieces of Jimmy because they can. Treating it like it is a shameful thing to do, or something to apologize for, makes what Jimmy did a taboo subject, and further makes it harder for sexual assault victims to speak up. Also, people think Jimmy is ugly when he really isn't. And this isn't me calling him attractive either. Hell no, he isn't handsome and he isn't ugly. At least on the outside. He'll always be ugly on the inside. Anyway, Jimmy is average looking, and that's what makes him even scarier and a more realistic perpetrator. Because he's just some guy. Someone you probably would not bat an eye at walking past on the street, and he is someone who's capable of terrible, awful things. Like, guys! The tulpar would not have been fun to stay on either. Imagine, being trapped on a ship for over a year with barely any form of entertainment. Besides the same 5 people and a few board games you've played dozens of times. And of course, we don't know all the things they had on the ship. But I doubt that it would have been the most interesting place to be. Why do you think Dysky was always doodling on his papers? Because there was hardly anything to do besides their jobs. There was no contact with the outside world except through Curly, I'm pretty sure. No social life. You sacrifice everything for a company who doesn't pay you enough. Sounds like my last job. Whew. One thing about this fandom that really irks me is the shipping. You look at this beautiful game about how capitalism kills and what rape culture really is like, and you thought, oh, these two should kiss. I don't know about that. A lot of the ships I genuinely just don't know how to feel about. Obviously, I hate Jimmy x Anya. That is a horrible ship and should not be happening or romanticized in any way. Like, no. I get that in some cases, victims fall in love with their abusers in a Stockholm Syndrome-esque way, but 100% of the time, all Jimmy x Anya shippers never do this, right? Like, ever. It's all pro-shippers. Plus, this is just not the fandom to do it in. I can't believe I have to tell this, but there's always going to be pro-shippers. Some of the other ships I feel iffy about are any of the ships with Curly. I don't particularly like them because of the power dynamics in play. Personally, Curly is their superior, and it's just not really ethical. It's not illegal, it's just not ethical, so I don't particularly like it. But that's just not my cup of tea. Could be yours, I don't know. Dysky x Swansea is a no-go for me as well because of the age gap. Age gaps are fine if the younger person is in their late 20s, when their brain is fully developed, and I'm pretty sure Dysky is still in his early 20s, which makes this incredibly weird. I wouldn't really bat an eye to it though if Dysky was older. I feel like the only good ship in mouthwashing is Swansea and his canonical wife back on Earth, and that's okay. We don't need to constantly ship characters all the time. There's a time and a place, and I fear this game is not it. If you want to ship characters, go to Danganronpa or to frickin' My Hero Academia or I don't know. Literally anything else, probably. People miss the point of the story all the time, and it really does bother me so much. It's okay to want to put the characters in a happy situation to feel better in like some sort of coping mechanism, but you also just can't ignore the bad completely. Mouthwashing characters are so complex and deep, and they need to be dealt with care, because one wrong move and you're done for, and you could totally mischaracterize them and perpetrate more problems within the fandom as well as society in general, which, not to get dramatic on everyone, fiction can affect reality. Poor media literacy has been a huge problem in fandom lately, especially with newer gen fans getting into the fandom culture and space as well. And not to blame it on Gen Alpha, the kids, the babies in the fandom, but they also haven't consumed as much media as older people in fandom space. I feel like I have, in my personal opinion, a really good grasp on media because it is something that interests me, and I also do really well in English, and analyzing is just what I do in my mind all the time. I want to be a film major. Sometimes I miss things, and that's just on me being a human, but I've been in fandom spaces much longer than these newer gens, and I understand tropes and shipping and problematic things a little bit better. My personal opinion, I don't think we should kick these newer gens out because, it isn't just them misinterpreting media. It is also people like me who've been in this fandom space for a while. And while I haven't quite figured out what exactly causes, this poor media literacy increase, I fear it might have something to do with TikTok. Oh brother. But that might just have to be a separate video of sorts because I am not going to try and figure all of that out right now and sidetrack more than I already have. Let's see. We as a fandom, need to do better at understanding the things we are interested in. Mouthwashing is such a complex game and we really need to do a better job. And there is just so much I could go over about this game still, but I genuinely just be talking for forever because of, how badly the fandom misinterpreted the game. Just to go over the most important parts one more time. Anya is more than a victim, she is more than what happened to her. Curly is morally gray, he is neither good or bad. He's both an enabler and a victim of Jimmy. Post-crash Curly is not a punishment for his actions. Disability is not a punishment. Dysky's not a baby, he also would not have helped Anya. Swansea does not care enough to help Anya. And Swansea's also a little bit underrated. Pony Express is what got them into the situation in the first place and perpetuated this toxic work environment that pushed Jimmy over the edge and led him to commit a crime. Jimmy is a bad guy and he is well written. Hopefully that covers all of the bases because I really hate to see people arguing with me over whether or not Anya was sexually assaulted because that sort of thing is not a debate. It happened, whether you want to believe it or not. And you denying it makes you just like Curly, Swansea, and Dysky, just a piece in the puzzle that is society's rape culture. Whew, so I had a lot to talk about, it seems, and I'm sorry if it seems like I am attacking you for anything you might do that I've mentioned in this video. I'm just talking about something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while now, and I hope no one is too upset. And if you are so butthurt over these things I've said, butthurt enough you possibly want to dox me or send me death threats, please go touch grass, you little weirdo. You don't know me. In the end, this is a fictional game about stuff that could possibly happen in real life. Not the spaceship stuff, obviously. Well, maybe in the future. But, the rape stuff and the company not caring about its employees, etc., 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 murder, suicide. As I've stated, each character acts how they were designed to act. And, it just went how it was supposed to go. You can't change it. If you enjoy this video, please consider subscribing because it helps me want to make more videos like this. If you have any idea for what I can make my next video about, comment below and I'll actually consider it because seriously, I really don't have any real video ideas at all. Also, don't be shy to follow me on my socials, which are in the description below and probably in this area if editor me remembers to put them. Thank you all lovely people for stopping by. Bye!